Attention passengers, the Layover podcast is about to take off, where the hosts Tracy Davis and Patrick Trevino share the unfiltered, behind-the-scenes stories of entrepreneurship. The number one rule of the Layover podcast? Hold nothing back. So sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy your flight. This is the Layover podcast.
Can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody rob me of my victory. Number one, that's what I'm meant to be. When by any means, only thing that makes sense to me, I can make nice or make history. I got that dog in me, yeah. Turn me up. Big energy, got the crowd.
So welcome back to another episode of the Layover podcast. We're really excited to have Miss Sierra Imari in our studio today.
Hi.
Welcome, Sierra. It's so great to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I'm extremely happy. I even smiled.
Wow, and that is a shocker. So let's just go ahead and tell you.
I'm honored, Pat. Thank you.
The smiles are few and far between with him. So Sierra, it is so exciting and so incredible to have you here. Your story is, we listened to it just even an hour ago, and it leaves you inspired, right? I can feel like I can take on the world now.
Thanks.
I feel the same.
Really?
and actually, I learned a lot. That was very...
Absolutely. Sierra, you are a creator, a thought leader, a business owner, constant student. You're always learning and evolving.
Yeah.
Your story, and that was Siri, is chiming in too.
Yeah.
Does she do that?
She wants to be me so bad. Sometimes they'll say Sierra, Siri, and she gets confused. But,
Hi, Siri.
yeah.
But tell us about you. Tell us about your journey, because it is a incredible one.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. Where do I start? I'll start, honestly, I could start with my parents. Both of my parents were executives in the music business. So I think just having that be the root of my conception was kind of okay, I've come from creative people. I think I'm very fortunate to come from parents that also took their roles very seriously of empowering artists, especially on the business side of things. And that rubbed off on me. I would say where my entrepreneurship and creative journey started, I would say the earliest memory is 5th grade.
Wow.
That's when I made my first girl group.
Get it?
And during recess, I don't know. I feel I've always had these creative passions or these ideas. And I was I never allowed my age or my circumstances to kind of get in the way of that. I would always try to figure out, okay, I may not have the big resources yet, but how can I leverage what I have at this moment? And so I would say in 5th grade, I had a group of friends who, of course, at the time, I think iCarly was a really big show, and recording your friends, and this was the early days of YouTube, and just kind of wanting to showcase that individual creative expression. But then I realized that, some of the members in the group felt some type of way because they were well, why don't you want to be in the group? Why don't you want to be a singer? I'm someone has to run the group. Somebody has to organize the schedule. I would make them do rehearsals at recess.
Dang, CEO in 5th grade. That's impressive.
Yeah. And so I think that's when it started. The next level of just entrepreneurship, I would say, was in 8th grade. I was acting a little a little preteen. I wasn't acting the best. And so my mom actually sent me to my church's school as oh, really? You want to act up? Okay. And so at my church's school, I kind of was a little bit isolated. I went from a public school of, I think, 2,100 kids to 18 kids in the entire school.
Oh, that's a big change.
Wow.
Yeah, it was definitely a culture and just social shock. And so at that time, I think that's when I really became a lot more introspective when it comes to my ideas and my concepts. And so I would not suggest anybody do this, but I started creating lip glosses, but colored lip glosses with eyeshadow and Vaseline, which again, that's just why I don't suggest anyone do that. But it was I wanted to figure out okay, I want to create something. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was living in Charlotte. So Charlotte's not the most creative city or known for creative expression. My mom and I moved from New York when I was pretty young. So I think at that point, I just have always looked at my entrepreneurship journey as a means for me to express myself and for other people to connect with that. Obviously, going to school and getting a degree in entertainment business, I think that sharpened my skills in terms of capitalizing off of a product and like selling to a market and like really understanding like the pillars of business. But that's where it started. I think it's always been in me. I think it's just
it's in your blood.
Yeah.
And while you were in school, it sounds like you had an entrepreneur mindset from the very early on.
Yeah.
But when you were in school, did you home in on it a little deeper, or did you dabble around in different things that you wanted to do, or did you always know you wanted to be in entertainment in the entertainment market?
I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment. I didn't know in what capacity though. Like when I was younger, at first I wanted to be a songwriter. Then I found out what an A&R was when I was like 13, which for those of you who don't know, a traditional A&R is basically, it stands for artist and repertoire. So it's basically a type of executive that helps artists through their creative process, whether it's an album, an EP, development, songwriting, studio sessions, etc. And then I realized, like, actually, no, like, I'm a storyteller, which then led into me getting into marketing. But then I also played The Sims a lot. And so in middle school, like, I would make, like, little episodes on The Sims. And
you know, we have so much. I played The Sims. Yes.
Really?
I remember getting Sims when it was like Windows 95.
Oh
1000%.
It started with my mom. Like my mom is a Simmer. So like she would play The Sims and I would see her play The Sims, and that's how I got into The Sims too. Like I love The Sims. Shout out to The Sims. No, and I think it was interesting too because that was actually probably one of my earliest experiences of creative expression utilizing those resources. Like it's still on YouTube, which I will not name the channel because it's quite embarrassing. But like, there's this YouTube video of this episode that I created. It was like a whole story about this superstar who like got in a car accident, like ran away.
You know everyone is searching this.
I know. I will not drop
They're Googling immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was like, I had to, obviously it was like, what, in 6th grade at that time? So it was like, I obviously did not have a budget. I obviously did not know how or where to even start creating a TV show or anything like that. But I knew that you could record on The Sims. I had like the Windows desktop editor at that time.
Oh yeah.
And I knew, I was like, okay, like let me try and see how this works. And I just put it out there. So I think early on in those days, it was like whatever resources I just had at my disposal, like that's just what I was using. And I think that's really a core pillar of like even my entrepreneurship today. It's very much about resource and like just being resourceful.
And you've seen this mirrored to you. I mean, you said your parents were executives, even your grandmother was executive. So you had to kind of watch role models, right? And learn from them as well.
Yeah, for sure. I would say like definitely positioned. I would say being like told, and shout out to mom and dad and grandma. I would say being told from when you're like 11 or 12, like understanding the value of reputation and value and what value you're bringing to people. It definitely plays a lot into your psyche. Because I think I've always asked that, like when I'm creating something or if I want to hit someone like emotionally with whatever I'm creating, like what value is it actually giving to them? And I think when we talk about like entrepreneurship, because there's a lot of like business coaches like on the internet, you know, saying all these things about, oh, you need to do this.
I love to debunk them.
Yes, me too.
I love the debunking because I don't know about you, but I don't get up at 4 a.m. to do sit-ups.
I don't either.
I got better things to do.
Hell no.
4 a.m, I'm probably still sleeping.
Yes.
Downing coffee.
Or downing coffee to get on a flight to actually go do real business.
Yeah.
On there. But yeah, it's funny you say that. We could have a whole
That's
episode
what
about
I'm
debunk.
saying. Like, because when you actually are living this and then you see people speak about what it requires to be an entrepreneur or anything like that, I'm kind of asking myself, we talked about this even with the algorithm thing and like feeling the need to post 3 times a day when that's not necessarily the ideal version of consistency, at least for me either.
Or
you know?
authentically you.
Exactly. And I think that's really important for a lot of people to understand. But I think just growing up in that space of like having parents, specifically my mom, like be like, you're not just representing yourself, you're also representing your family's legacy. That's also super important. It definitely has made me be a lot more intentional when it comes to who I'm even targeting with like my entrepreneurship journeys as well. So like, yeah.
So who are you targeting with your entrepreneurship journey?
And now I would say, honestly, like people that really just resonate energetically with me. And I think specifically like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, those who really want to sustain themselves creatively.
Right.
I think that's a really big thing right now. I mean, we're going to get into it in a second, but like, I think those that have a story to tell, but also don't know how to actually go about that and sustain themselves like monetarily. Like, I think that's who I'm trying to target. Like those that have that gift of foresight, but also may not necessarily know how to leverage or utilize all of their resources at their current disposal.
Yeah. And you brought up something that I think all 3 of us relate to, right? When you make these decisions, also understanding that family part of it, right? And how that impacts that as well.
It's super important.
Tracy comes from a long list of entrepreneurs in her family.
Yeah.
And my abuela watches everything I do.
Right?
Like, she's my biggest critic.
Yes.
And my mom is too. She actually told me the other day that I need to slow down talking.
Power of the pause.
Exactly.
Power of the pause.
And so-
I taught him that too.
And so you bring up a really valid point that a lot of times it's either forgotten, right? Or it's clouded. It's clouded judgment, right? You're not paying attention to what you're really doing.
Yeah.
But I think what you said really resonates, and I think that connects with us as well, because her last name is Davis, mine's Trevino. It's you carry that I don't want to say weight, but it is weight, right?
Yeah.
It is. You're carrying your family's legacy on your shoulders as well, like it or not. You really are.
You really are. And you represent them in everything that you do. And I think I've learned, and we talked about this during the retreat as well, like I'm learning how to balance that like responsibility of carrying my family's weight, but also allowing myself to find myself being a young adult. Because I think having that, like, especially as a child, it's like, I have to be like perfect, and I'm a Virgo too, so
Yep,
I'm naturally
everything.
like I'm naturally a perfectionist, and for the Astro girlies, I'm a Virgo Mercury as well in the 10th house. So if you know, you know.
Oh, we know. You don't know, but
I mean, I'm all. But what am I? I'm a Pisces.
You're a
right?
Pisces. Yeah, you're a Pisces.
And what does that mean? That I just
You are very fluid, and like your emotions are very deep. Like you're very passionate. You're watery. I don't know how to like.
What does that mean, watery?
Okay, it's an episode for another time.
But I mean, I think just being aware of that, it's like, okay, I'm learning now to give myself softness of like being 24, being a young adult. Like I don't have to have it all figured out. It's okay. And I think just honoring that journey of like, I can have vision and also still like mess up, and like, that's okay.
I wish we could scream this from the mountaintops, because, we both are business owners, and you are going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And it's how you pivot and grow from those mistakes that defines your success.
True.
And I think that, like you said beautifully, that you have to give yourself the grace. Like as you learn, you're going to evolve, and you're going to learn, we talked about this earlier, the type of leader you want to be. That's going to, you're going to evolve into that. And I mean, we have some messy stories on our side.
Oh, a lot of stories.
But getting back to you, so you had initially gone to film school, right?
Initially, I actually went to an HBCU in Maryland,
Okay.
but I hated it, so I'm not going to name the school, but it just wasn't for me. I realized that I was going to school for mass communications at that HBCU, even though I love HBCUs, by the way, like they're very important. But I think the curriculum and what I was paying for, because it was an investment.
Sure.
And they were teaching me things about like the radio industry and creating like my own radio station in like 2017, 2018. And I just knew, like, being fortunate to have family in the industry and also just studying like the trends. I'm like, this is already outdated. Like,
archaic.
This is already obsolete. Why am I spending money on learning and getting a degree in something that's definitely gonna be obsolete by the time I graduate? It made no sense to me. And so I just bet on myself, and I just bought a one-way ticket in my ethics class, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I went to the Los Angeles Film School, and that's where I got my degree in entertainment business.
I mean, damn. Can we
It's
just say
badass.
like mic drop there for a second?
And it was an ethics class too.
Yeah, it was.
That's so badass.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, that's like, that
really
should be
cool.
like your tagline. You're like, I bought a one-way ticket.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest everyone do that. It was definitely a learning curve for sure, but I felt very called to do it. Like, I felt like I had to be in that environment.
Yeah.
I had to. And I felt like, if any, I don't have any kids. I was 18 at the time. Like, I was a freshman. So I felt like that was a perfect time for me to transition, because I wasn't a sophomore.
Yep.
Like, everyone kind of has like that freshman year, like either you're staying in school or you transfer, or like that was the perfect, like, easy point for me. And so I just felt like, why not? Like, the worst that could happen is like it doesn't work out. But the fact that there was a school there, I didn't even know like film schools that had that major of entertainment business even existed. The only school that I knew of was Full Sail, but I was like, I don't want to be in Florida, respectfully. And so I just was like, let's just try it and see what happens. And I got accepted, and I just, had to like literally walk by faith in that situation.
Powerful. I mean, when you say you had to bet on yourself, where did you find that courage? I mean, that takes a strong, unique individual to say, you know what, I'm going to just, like you said, bet on myself that I'm going to be able to make it out there by myself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Honestly, this is just like me being very transparent. I just was not happy. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't fulfilled, and I felt like I was kind of at rock bottom. So I was
Yeah.
like, what's the worst that could happen? It was like, I'm not fulfilling my creative endeavors the way I want. I don't really feel supported creatively, and I kind of just feel like I'm just sitting here. So the worst that could happen is like I go to LA, this doesn't take off, and I go somewhere else. It was kind of just like my mentality was the only way that you can go now is like up. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of at rock bottom at this point. So I kind of was just like, let's just see what sticks, you know?
The most beautiful things happen from a rock
I feel
bottom.
like creativity for you is very important.
It is.
Is the forefront. And
It's
if you feel
definitely-
like you're not getting that or fulfilled in that way, it's almost like you feel trapped.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And-
I was out, Pat, let me tell you. I genuinely would say like I was just not fulfilled. I wasn't happy. I could tell that I just kind of felt very depleted. Like
Yeah.
I didn't feel like resourceful. And I don't even mean just by like external value, but just like internal spiritual. Like I
Right.
just felt like, what am I here for? And so I felt like the only way for me to really experience that is like putting myself in those environments. Like sometimes I feel like we have to plant ourselves in like these different types of soils in order to see like which is actually like the best fertilizer for you to grow.
I mean, your self-awareness it always still shocks me. We've met, a couple times, and every time that she speaks, we went to lunch earlier. It just listening to you talk and how self-aware you are, even at that young of an age. I mean, when I think about what I was doing in college, and then I listen to this story, I'm like, I'm sorry, mom and dad.
I can't even say the shit I did in college.
You'll get arrested.
That'll be like a completely different podcast.
I mean, do you surround yourself with, are your friends similar in nature, or are you pretty unique here?
They are. I feel like growing up being like the baby, I've always grown up like being like the baby cousin or like the little sister or like the niece. That's like my role for a lot of people. Like, so I feel like I've always been around wisdom and people always kind of give it. Now, sometimes I may not listen, but like always been around people that have kind of given me like this, like, if you want to do this, like, let's just suggest, like, you don't want to go down there. Like,
Right.
But I would say like my friend group, especially like my core like friend group, they're absolutely amazing. They're absolutely incredible. Shout out to my best friend Naima. She's in medical school right
love
now. Getting her degree. She wants to be a plastic surgeon, but not even
Smart
like
women.
from like a cosmetic standpoint. She actually wants to help children that have cleft lip.
Oh, wow.
And so she actually created a Spanish club at her school so they can learn how to speak Spanish, so they can go to Spanish speaking countries, so they can like help more people.
Powerful.
Yeah. And so shout out to her. So I feel like just being surrounded by people like that are very intentional with their gift and also want to expand that. I think that also inspires me as well. So yeah, shout out to the crew.
That's incredible. Well, we've talked about tech in the past, right?
Yeah.
So your journey was in entertainment, and it still is a heavy focus of entertainment, but you started to dabble into technology, right? So where did that start, and where is that taking you?
Yeah, I mean, one could say, oh, well, like me being Gen Z, like technology is like
In your hands,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like
Right,
everywhere. And especially growing up, like playing virtual worlds, like Club Penguin and IMVU and The Sims, like that's definitely like my entry point. But I would also say what really like changed my perspective and how I kind of got into the type of technology that I'm in now was actually from my school. I used to volunteer a lot, and a lot of people don't realize, especially those that go to my school, so I might be dragging them a bit, but it's with care and with compassion. But like my school is very resourceful, and it's in the heart of Hollywood. So they would, especially pre-COVID, like they would always have these volunteer opportunities for us to go to. And a lot of students just wouldn't take them for whatever reason. And there was this one class I had called Art of the Pitch. And my professor, Donna Lloyd, was like, I'm looking for 2 volunteers. I only have 2 spots. And so I was like, I'll go. Like, I didn't really know what it was, but it was over the weekend and I didn't have anything planned. So I was just like, I'll go. Like, I'll get the hours. Like, I just want to see what this is about. Sure. And it was for the AT&T Shape Conference, which AT&T, I have to look at the camera. AT&T, I don't know why you guys aren't doing that anymore. You definitely should, especially now. But it was basically this like entertainment and tech expo, and they like gamified it. So you had this app and you had to like explore these different buildings in like, I think it was like the Universal Paramount like studio lot.
Oh, wow.
And like each like building had like either like a demo or like a concert or a panel. And it was like the first time I had seen entertainment and technology integrated in such like a futuristic way. Like that was the first time I saw a hologram concert. That was my first time I wore a headset. So it was very like ahead of its time at that point. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is super cool. This is very much like 2028, 2027. And mind you, this is like in 2019. Fast forward like 7 months, like COVID happens and it changes everything. And it got to a point where I started really thinking about like, oh no, like this is kind of like where things are going now, because once COVID happened and everyone kind of got really dependent on the internet for connectivity, making sure like they're checking in on their family members. People were even just consuming, you know, just like online content, you know, Hollywood productions were kind of shut down a little bit. They were trying to find their loopholes, but it wasn't as like massively produced, like especially early COVID days. And I just started paying attention to these like patterns of people leveraging the internet to their advantage, myself included. And I started getting into like Web3 a lot. I'm not like the biggest, like, I don't have the biggest platform on X, but I had a lot of friends that did, and they would always kind of put me on to like these like topics or these like Twitter spaces that were happening. And so I was just like listening, and I just kind of got into like the Web3 rabbit hole, honestly. And especially like the artistic, because I know a lot of people deem Web3 as very much like crypto, decentralized, Bitcoin, like that's it. But at the time, I knew I was not like an NFT girl. Like I would tell people like I'm in Web3, but I'm more of like a metaverse girl. I'm a marketer. I'm a storyteller. I'm a world builder. Like I'm focusing on like the immersive experience, not necessarily in how the technology can enhance that versus just like the monetization of like this tech. And I think when I got into that piece and I started noticing like friends of mine making a lot of money, whether it was from like NFT drops, but it was how they were making this money off these NFT drops. It wasn't even like buying these pictures. This was music NFTs still. And their marketing was different. Like they weren't even focused on the product. They were focused on community building first. And then they built the product based on what the community voted for. Like it was just different. And I think that's when I realized I'm like, oh, like this is my passion. This is what I care about, because this is really the future of entertainment.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly where we're headed. And I want to be prepared for it. And I want to help other people be prepared for it too, really.
Absolutely.
Well, you at a very young age were a very smart, mature person.
Oh, thank you.
Because for someone to be able to see a trend, change their mindset, and then aggressively go into it, right? And start, that takes a lot of self-discipline.
Oh, thank you.
To be able, and intelligence.
Absolutely.
Really. People are hit in the face all the time with great creativity ideas, and they just don't either take the risk or the time or think it's not going to work. And kudos to you for seeing something and diving in and going into it.
Yeah, I felt like it was kind of not like survival of the fittest, but I was just like, this is, you know, I've...
Shout out to Mobb Deep on that one.
You know what I'm saying? You know, but I would say like having parents that also act like mentors or family members that act like mentors, I was always the one asking them like, so what do I need to know? Like, what do I need to be prepared for? And then it started switching where they were asking me.
Wow.
And they started asking me like, so what are your friends doing? What are they getting into? What are the trends that, and I started being the guinea pig. And I started being, well, what, does Gen Z, like, do y'all like this? Do you like that? And I started really paying attention to the value that my age like actually provided with a lot of people, because people that aren't in entertainment may not know technically entertainment is like a youth-based like industry. Like they're constantly, most of the companies that focus on like youth sales, whether they're teenagers, college, like early 20s, that's where a lot of the festivals like benefit and get their money from. And so when I started noticing the value my age actually provided like my family members and my family members' peers as well, like I was like, oh, like you basically want to get access to me and my friends. Like,
you're like,
let me
I can
leverage
make money off of this.
like let me leverage that. Like, that's cool. Like, and I think it's interesting though, because I've also dealt with a lot of ageism as well. And I think obviously, rightfully so, like, because I've talked about this before, like a lot of people in my generation, like we don't really read. And like, I understand that becomes, you know, a whole thing and like intergenerational. But I think having access to what these like companies or these execs want, which is young minds and young interests, I was like, oh, like I can easily like understand that because I am that. And I just, decided to focus on like the benefit that like my age and my value actually provide instead of looking at it as like I was a rookie or something.
I'm so glad that you said that because Pat and I talk about this all the time. When we both started in the aviation tech world, I was the tech world. He was running facility management and operations, but we experienced a lot of ageism. I mean, as a young female and he was a young male. And gosh, I mean, I was in my early 20s. You too, right? When you started out? Well, you started at airports when you're like 15.
Well, I mean, yeah. Which is true.
Yeah, you did.
But I have permission from my parents and a signed document that I could work after I was in 11th grade, I think.
Okay,
and
good.
I could only work between
Not
like
child
3
labor.
and 7. So
Okay, good.
But we experience a lot of that where people question, like when they hear you talk and, you're like, you're dropping wisdom, right? You're teaching them something that they don't know. And then their mind immediately goes to, wait, how old are you?
Yeah.
And you're like, what the hell does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
But you turned that around and you made that
but
a
I think
power.
society in itself is changing too.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll use an example, right? The way we dress, right? 10, 15 years ago, you would never walk into a meeting wearing a pair of Jordans or a pair of sneakers.
Yeah.
Or with a sports coat and a pair of jeans.
Right.
Absolutely not. That was just down the gear that you wore when you were not at work.
And now.
And the same people that critiqued it and judge you are the same people that are buying it now.
Right.
Because it relates to this generation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just a small piece of that, right? We can go here on and on and on about that. But I love what you said when you're like, wait a minute. You pretty much want access to my friends and what we think to try to monitor. And it's you see that everywhere.
Yeah. It's a
Absolutely
superpower.
everywhere.
And you turned it into something amazing. And so, I mean, going off of that, what was the next step of where you were like, okay, my knowledge is power. People want my knowledge. Where did that lead you on your journey from an entrepreneur standpoint?
Yeah. It's interesting because before COVID, like, I don't want to say dismantled because it actually was a blessing in disguise, but I had an internship at a PR firm called Society House, which shout out to Tony from Society House. And it was a paid internship, a blessing. But when I left LA, like I lost my internship, I had to figure out how I was paying for like my college tuition. And I had came across, like, this was also when like LLC Twitter was like a thing and everyone was selling online courses. But I just started going on these really passionate lives on Instagram during COVID about what I was learning in school. And I was telling you guys this earlier, I started paying attention to how a lot of people were either getting fired or like quitting their jobs during COVID and how they were really taking this time of like, well, we're inside. Let me bet on myself. Let me see, if what would happen, what's the worst that could happen if I decided to bet on my creative endeavors? Like, I'm not working. Like, I barely have toilet paper at home. Like, let me see what I can do. And I realized I'm like, oh, like a lot of people actually want access to the information I have. So I might as well just take that, kind of add my little sprinkles to it, clean up these like decks that I'm like getting from my online classes at this point and just like resell them like on Gumroad and, make it look pretty and cute and like answer these questions that people had for me. And that was kind of the beginning of the Gen Z Exec. Like I started making these info posts of just like, this is what it means to be an artist. Like if you only have like a limited amount of, let's say $50 to market your, project, you take like that. I think I was like, take $5, $10 bills and like ask like 5 of your friends, yo, like I'll treat you to lunch. Like just like repost my stuff and like just give them $10. Now you have 5 people like promoting your stuff. So little things like that just to like, because again, like I understand a lot of people in my generation, like, especially at that time, like we didn't have the money to pay like an influencer like $300, $500. Like we didn't have it. So how do you leverage those resources? And so that's where I actually wrote my first book called The Post-Pandemic Playbook. And it was basically just like an interactive guide showing artists like this is how you can potentially build a career during the pandemic, because in the music business specifically, there's like this book called the Bible. Well, it's not called the Bible. It's like nicknamed the Bible, but it's called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business by this attorney, Donald S. Passman. And it is like the Bible. There's a multitude of volumes. It's kind of like, even if you're a producer, an executive, an artist, it doesn't matter who you are. Even if you just don't even read it, you need to have it.
Right.
Like, it needs
It's
to
a
be
standard staple.
It's just a standard staple. And I was like, at that time, I was like, but that's not even valid now because we're in the pandemic. I said, so artists that want to build something for themselves, they might not necessarily, this may not even really like be for them. And so I was like, what if I could just make something really interactive? Because again, I know my generation, I wouldn't say that we don't read. Like I would just say, the ways in which we consume information is just different.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just different. And I was like, I would rather go through something that's like a guide that's hyperlinked that can kind of show me where I need to go versus like me just reading a chapter about what this could do for me and like let me go experiment it with myself. So I did that, and that was the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey because Gumroad made it very easy. This is not sponsored, by the way, even though I would like a partnership. But so we're gonna manifest that. But I actually made like $400 my first day.
No way.
Of like dropping the book. And then like I didn't make any sales for like 2 weeks after that. And then like it started fluctuating. And that's when I started realizing like, oh, like I have to consistently market this stuff. Like I have to consistently like put that out. And I think that was really the beginning of the entrepreneurship journey of the Gen Z Exec, specifically of, oh, like this is something that is ongoing and continuous. This isn't just like a one drop thing.
Right.
So yeah.
And I think it's cool because when you see the initial money coming in, even on that first day, it makes you believe it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, okay, this is real. I can do this.
Right.
It's powerful. And so from a tech standpoint, you started to create this book and this took off. Are you writing more? Are you going to continue to drop books?
Yeah, of course. I'm working on a few things. I think during COVID, I really was focused on like dropping a bunch of digital products. Like I had an online course called Digital Artist Development. Like I did like 2 like freebies called like From Creativity to Capital. And it was like 10 different ways for you to monetize on the internet. Like just all different types of stuff that I could do. And then when I graduated, I got like a record label job. So that kind of put it on pause. But I'm very excited just to say like we're definitely getting back into the foundational origins of the Gen Z Exec. I feel like I've been pulled away from that. So now I'm getting back to my roots and I'm very excited about that.
That's amazing. So this is a brand that you're building. I mean, it's Gen Z Exec. Talk about it though. So it's full brand, full.
It's,
what would you call it?
Exclusive?
Yeah, I guess it is exclusive. No, it is because you guys are asking good questions that people don't ask me. Like I think I was telling you guys earlier, a lot of people they'll ask me from like an executive standpoint, what I'm doing like in Entertech or like a creator standpoint. But a lot of people don't really ask or like, I guess in the entertainment side of things too, like they don't really give like entrepreneurs like entrepreneurial credit, which is like super weird, but
the hustle's real.
Yeah. And so I think because entertainment is kind of dependent upon like, oh, what label you're at or what network are you? It's like still very dependent upon like systematic structures. So when you're doing something as an entrepreneur, like I don't think people have the mindset or like the mind frame to ask questions in that regard or in that capacity. So thank you guys so much. I would say the Gen Z Exec is definitely the epitome of my family's legacy.
Ooh.
And I think when people like hear the Gen Z Exec, they're like, ooh, like that's like exotic. Like, ooh, like that's nice. But like when I really explain to them, like, no, like my mom is the Gen X. My grandma's like the baby boomer. Like this is really like who I am. Like it's not just an act. Like this is really what I embody. Like my mom being an executive at ASCAP, like 20 years down the line when I'm like working at a record label, you have like major songwriters and producers that just so happen to know my mom because she was the one that gave them their first opportunity.
That's wild.
And was like educating them on like royalty rates. Like this is how you get paid your worth. So now it's like that little moment of her just believing in someone and educating them, like from a business standpoint, is so much long standing because they're not like, oh, like that's your daughter? Like, oh, like we're solid. Like whatever you need. And so I think the Gen Z Exec has become, yes, a brand, because I also have like a comic book and like things like that. And I'm, partnering with Adobe right now to like build like a really cool experimental video game around the brand.
Congratulations.
And what that means. Thank you. So, I mean, I think it's just right now, like it's really like the branded version of myself, but also using myself as an experiment in like a weird way, but like an ethical way, of course.
Of course. Pat, where is your brand? What would your brand be? I'd love to hear this one.
Oh, no. I'm not even going to go there. But I honestly, it's very rare that I'm speechless.
Oh my God.
And
yeah,
I'm
people who know
speechless.
him know that that's not a thing.
I'm so impressed with your story and everything you have going on. And there's no doubt you're going to be a very successful person.
You already are.
I
Yeah.
received that, guys. Thank you. So
Of
are you.
course.
Oh
Well,
my
thank
God.
you.
I think it's awesome.
Well, and so you wrote books. You're now focused on the Gen Z Exec, but you said you were also working at a record label. So talk about that. I mean, for a lot of people, they'd say, great, you made it. You're working out where people, want to go work at.
Yeah.
Where is your mindset with that? And why are you still pursuing kind of an entrepreneurial journey? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to have worked at a record label, especially right out of college.
Yeah.
Like literally I graduated December 2021 and I started January 2022.
Oh, wow.
Like it was quite immediate. And I was very fortunate to have somebody vouch for me even get that job. Like I actually didn't even apply for the job.
It's all who you know.
Yeah, it is really all about who you know. And I'm very fortunate. I mean, I would say like that experience is definitely an interesting one, which I hope one day I can say for my biopic. Because there were a lot of experiences that have definitely shaped on what I feel like I want to do as a leader and things that I learned that I don't want to do as a leader.
Right.
And I think I learned a lot about the flaws within the record label system. Like we hear about those things, but to actually see it in real time, it's like, why do we operate in this way when we know like that's not necessarily sustainable? But yeah, like to your point, like a lot of people do kind of look at it. It's like, oh, like I've made it, or like, oh, like this is really fire. And I learned a lot. That's where I actually led my first brand partnership with Microsoft. Like I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And I'm very grateful like for the team at the label to like have trusted me with that project. Like I was 23. I was the only person even leading that partnership. Like, so, I mean, and I did it, you know, successfully. So, you know, like that was fun. But like,
no surprise there.
But honestly, I think it really came back to my parents. Like my parents, and I don't know if I can cuss. It's a Sunday, so I won't.
You can. You're
I
fine.
won't today. It's the Lord's day. But what I will say, it's like I had parents who got like fucked over, like by the industry, and that was one thing that they always said. Like, if you don't take anything from like anything that we've said to you, it's like own your shit.
Yeah,
like own it. Like,
amen to that.
We have contributed so much. Like, I have, you know, parents and, you know, uncles and aunts that have said like, you know, I did this project and I helped this major artist, and like I can call them up at any time, but like you're not making any residual income from that. You actually have no royalties like at all. Like you don't own it. And so it's like, yes, you have contributed to the culture and pop culture, and like that is an accomplishment within itself. But when you become like, and I'm not saying my family is this, but like when you don't have any of like the benefits from the work years down the line, it really does set a precedent of like, so what was that for?
Absolutely. What value was it?
Really? Yeah. And so I think that's kind of what I took away from me working at the label. Like I learned a lot, and I always knew like that because I was hired as an assistant.
Okay.
And even when I got hired, I was like, I'm not an assistant. like I just know I'm not. And I had to learn like how to be uncomfortable in those ways, because it was kind of like boot camp for me. I think it was really like executive boot camp. And I'm very grateful to have had that assistant experience at a record label, because I think I learned the inner functions of that. And I learned how to be timely. And like, also I was an executive assistant to 2 executives at the same time. So it was very like, I had to be timely. I had to figure out, okay, like, what are this resource, and like they're different. It's just like it was such a mind fuck, really. But it really taught me like, okay, this works here, this works in this capacity. I want this in my future endeavors. I don't like this though. Right. And it kind of just helped me shape my own opinion of like how I want to run my business, like moving forward. It was definitely a stepping stone.
And did it also teach you in a way of like, I think you touched a little bit on this before, was that style of leadership, right?
Yes.
The do's and don'ts, right?
Yes.
And did you take a lot from that as well?
Absolutely, Pat. Absolutely. I definitely think like I learned different types of leadership that there is. And I think I also learned definitely what I liked and what I didn't like. Like I remember one of my former employers, like he had brought his dogs to work, or like his girlfriend's dog. She was like breeding dogs, and like they brought the dogs to the office, and it was just like so fun. And I was like, I love that this is an environment where we can just do that, and like dogs are running around, and like as long as it's not like, you know, pooping anywhere, like everyone's cool.
Minor details.
Yeah, but it's like I also learned in other capacities too of like, I don't like, you know, when someone's frustrated that there's like a certain level of passive aggressiveness when instead of communicating like why you don't like something, or like if I present an idea that I want to do for an artist, it's not like a, well, no, it's like, no, but tell me why so I can adjust.
Give me feedback.
Exactly. And I think that's what I learned about like what I want to be as a leader. I want to definitely have a democratized type of like leadership style where I'm hearing everyone's opinion and I'm not just shutting it down, but I'm really understanding like where my assistants, the interns, like hearing everyone's thoughts, because a lot of the ideas that were really fired to me, like came from the people that weren't in the C-suite, and they would never see the light of day because certain executives didn't really see the value in it until they saw someone else do it. And now they're like, okay, like we should bring that back up, but it's too late.
Absolutely. And I think it's powerful because you have different perspectives. And I think
Exactly.
that is what shapes, I mean, any successful company is not having a dictator at the top. It's, well, at least we believe.
I believe it
in our
too.
companies,
No,
we
no.
believe it's collaboration.
I absolutely. And I mean, I had one person that once I worked for, or I'd say I didn't work for, but they were a customer of mine. And he said to me one day, your employees like you too much. That's your downfall.
Mm.
And I at an early age, I was like, okay, but I'm not an asshole.
Yeah.
And I treat people with respect. But then I started to think that the way this gentleman's leadership style is a fear tactic.
Yeah.
So when he's around, everything is running perfect. But as soon as he leaves, all his employees take a deep breath and I go, thank goodness he's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. And so that's not real leadership. That's
No.
just, you're running a dictatorship or you're running, a boot camp, right? You're
Yeah.
not really connecting with your people. And us, and it sounds like you're exactly the same way. It's about working as a team and collaborating together.
Absolutely.
And it's funny because I ran into this at a tech conference. Somebody had said to me, I had an idea like that a while ago. My company shot it down and now we're scrambling to put it back together, to bring it back up.
See?
And he goes, it's too late. Our competitors ran with it. now,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny how sometimes executives put on tunnel vision.
Yep.
And especially if now you have board members and different things and
Yeah.
everything kind of homes in all about the money, all about the money, all about the money.
Yeah.
And when you focus so much all about the money, it takes away from the creativity.
Absolutely.
And so this
Yeah,
is cool.
it's-
This is really,
it is, isn't it neat? Yeah.
it is very neat.
And so from a balance standpoint, how do you balance, entrepreneurship, the drive, the hustle with that creativity, right?
Oh,
Because it's like you can't have one or the other, you have to find that middle ground.
I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
I think right now I'm kind of allowing, and Karen talked about this at the retreat. I think the theme for me for the past month actually has been like allowing my inner child to flow, because I think
Love it.
that is really where a lot of my creative ideas have come from.
Yeah.
Like even with my show, the Zodiac Games, or even like, the Gen Z Exec, like all of that came from me actually not wanting to monetize it at all. Like it was very much like, that would be a cool idea if like I did this, or that would be cool if I did that. Well, why not? Can I do that? And like, let me just try it. And then of course, I am a businesswoman at the end of the day. So I'm
Yes,
like,
you
oh,
are.
like, can I monetize this? Like that would be kind of cool. And I think right now I'm just learning how to balance between, okay, what do I really want to create? Why? How does this fit into this ecosystem that I'm building? But let me not focus on the monetary right now. Like, let me really focus on how do I want people to feel when they interact with whatever I'm creating. And I think that has been my balance right now.
That's beautiful, because I had an experience many, many years ago with someone where I had they make you write a business plan and then your marketing plan and and I took a lot of time to prepare this document. And at the end of the day, it just came down to, well, this is not really a marketing plan. There's no budget in here. There's no monetary figure. And I quickly realized that me and these other individuals were on two different pages.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work because they're looking at that return on investment before they even got to see what the actual strategy was. That we were going to do. Right. And as you know, with marketing, it doesn't work that way.
Not at all.
Especially in today's market.
Yeah,
definitely.
A lot of
And
risks you gotta
so
take.
I do think that, and I hope that other entrepreneurs that are out there and other current business owners, right? There's companies out there that are very successful for 100 years. They've been successful.
Yeah.
But internally, they're always evolving.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how many businesses we run into that are looking for services like from Mind and Social for marketing, for how do we connect with this group? How do we connect with this group? And it's like, you could internally just ask your staff. Like,
Literally.
you have engineers, project managers, all these other people that are working with you that are very intelligent people.
Yeah.
And they may have a lot of ideas since they know it, but no one's asking them because
Exactly.
they go through the old traditional way
Absolutely.
of putting it forth. So
And one thing that I think really stands out as both of you guys are talking is that It's really when you're authentically you and you are creating or growing a business or whatever it is, your marketing plan, right? When you are delivering something that's so authentically you, that success is going to come. And it's the people that I feel like they hone in on, okay, there's a trend. I'm going to just follow the trend, even though that's not their passion. That's not who they are.
Exactly.
And it's very clear that you focus on that first. And I think that's a really key to success and your success. I hope other entrepreneurs listen to that find your passion and do what you are designed to do.
Yeah.
The money will come if you're doing, something authentic, right?
Yeah. But I also think too that part of that is not just the entrepreneur, right? It could also be viewed and be resourceful information for existing executives.
Yeah.
Right? Like, nobody likes a CFO. Nobody likes the accounting department.
Sorry to CFOs.
Let's just get real, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones, their role is to make sure the business is running.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in respect to that, sometimes they don't understand future vision
Yeah.
of, especially when it comes to marketing,
Definitely.
right? Because marketing is not something that's like, okay, we're going to do this and this. It evolves. Your strategy's always evolving.
And I want to add on to that really quick. And because in the music industry specifically, like marketing, of course, it can make or break a project instantly.
Right.
But what I've realized is that like a lot of labels specifically, or like independent labels too, like just like the label system, the organizational like structure of the music industry, once a new trend comes around and they do it successfully one time, they're so stubborn on just doing that one thing instead of being open to other ways in which they can expand upon it.
Wow.
Until someone else does it, like you said, and now it's in competitive mode. Now we're in survival. And I think that's a shift that I'm noticing, not just in the music or in the entertainment industry, but some businesses too. Like I believe that there's going to be a shift from like a survival mindset into what happens if we actually identify our own version of sustainability and success and then following that, because it's not like a copy and paste for everyone. And I think like that, your point of just like the marketing piece, it's just so profound because marketing is really just storytelling. And even like with Dasani or just using like a water company, like Life Water and Dasani, they're selling the exact same product, even though one is higher quality than the other. But like they both have two completely different like target audiences. Yep. And like even with Life Water, they partnered with artists to do a whole like collaborative album with these artists. And I had never even heard of Life Water really until an artist that I'm a really big like supporter of, Baby Tate, did a song with them. And I'm like, wait a minute, like you did a song with a water company? Now I'm just gonna get the water, and it's an alkaline water company. So I'm like, I'm definitely gonna buy the water now. But Dasani, no, please Coca-Cola, don't come for me. Like what is Dasani doing to hit like a new market?
Yep.
And they may be comfortable in their current target market right now, but it's like the marketing, I think, and especially the storytelling, again, goes back into the internal ethos, I think, of a lot of companies of like, what do we want people to feel when they interact with our stuff?
I see that a lot. So again, being in aviation industry, there's a lot of stagnant type of approaches, from a sales strategy to a marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And I always tell people all the time, and it's like, just because your company's 100 years old doesn't mean you need to act 100 years old. Right? You should market that you're 100 years old. That in itself is just that you have the foundation to do it, but evolving that and I push that because we just had an episode about trade shows. I have this thing about trade shows. And
are you against them?
I don't like them much. Like,
really?
I don't like certain.
There's specific trade shows.
There's certain trade shows that I don't like.
Okay.
But I also think that why I'm referencing to that. I can go and tell a CFO, I'm going to spend $80,000 on trade shows this year and have no problem with it. But then I say, hey, I'm not going to do trade shows. I'm going to spend $80,000. I'm going to do a digital campaign. I'm going to do video content. I'm going to also set up a podcast. I'm also going to set this up all within the same $80,000, within that budget. And it would be questioned.
Of course.
Pushed through because it's a different mindset.
It is.
I'm trying to create a narrative on something versus following the same path that's been done for.
And shout out to you. And it goes actually into, I'm so glad that you brought this up. It was such a profound example. It actually goes into a really big thing when I talk about Entertech of like, why is it that the entertainment industry is treated like shit when it actually contributes so much to businesses, it contributes so much to the global economy. And even in my it's not a manifesto, but low-key kind of is. Like even in my article, like when I first coined the term publicly about Entertech, I talk about how when the global pandemic happened and everyone was running out of toilet paper, everyone was panicking, no one knew what to do globally, the one thing that people all ran to for ease and comfort was entertainment.
Absolutely.
Whether it was music, whether it was TV, movies, games, books, etc., podcasts, whatever, it was entertainment. But to your point, I could want to invest in my business and on the creative side to craft a narrative, and you're going to be questioned. Why is that? Like, why is there not, although people understand the value of entertainment, and we're constantly proving that in everything that we're doing, why is it the entertainment industry and specifically pouring back into those creators that contribute to it? Why is that such a big issue? Like, I don't understand what that's about.
Well, I love that. And I mean, it's true. And it's almost heartbreaking too, because the people who are doing the creating are not benefiting as much from the output, right?
Definitely not.
And so you're very passionate about this. So
Yes,
I think
I
it's
am.
clear. I mean, we had lunch just a second ago and you were very passionate about this piece. So you mentioned Entertech. Okay. So can you tell us what Entertech is?
Yes.
For the masses?
Yes. And let me have a power of the pause for a second.
There you go. Power of the pause.
Because there's a lot that we can unpack. But Entertech at its core, it is a term that I've coined, and it basically represents the intersection between entertainment and technology.
Okay.
The actual definition is, the intersection between entertainment and technological philosophies and business models, specifically in a post-pandemic environment, just considering what I just said about the pandemic and how we got even more dependent on the internet. But as time has evolved, Entertech has really become, I believe, a staple of what the future of entertainment is going to be, and not necessarily an industry, but a whole ecosystem of independent creative sustainability. Like, that's really what Entertech is, for sure.
And so what does that mean to you, the independent creative sustainability? What does that look like?
Yeah, so in the most ideal world, and what I'm noticing just in the patterns that I'm paying attention to, I think we're starting to see a major shift of artists, creators, creative directors, marketers, those that would either be hired by these big networks or labels or production companies to work within those systems. You're starting to see these independent freelancers, or they're starting their own agencies, or they're doing things independently and kind of creating their own brands and ecosystems and their own businesses, really. I think Entertech is really the independent ecosystem of creative sustainability of for example, I live already in Entertech because although I do work with a music tech company, I'm still doing other things. Some could say, oh, well, I'm an executive producer because of my TV show. Someone else could say, oh, well, she's a comic book, creator because I have a comic book. Someone could say I'm an author. I'm not necessarily limited to just one thing that I'm doing at a company to sustain myself anymore. And so I think that's what Entertech really is, just empowering creators to leverage technology as a tool of empowerment, where they don't have to necessarily subject themselves to inhumane systems that really don't care about them and just want to exploit them. And they can kind of exploit yourself. If they're going to monetize off of you, why now? Should they take a cut when you should just own all of it?
Take your power.
I mean, and outside of the entertainment market, I see that in other companies too, right?
Yeah.
And you join a company, they're doing certain other things a certain way. Nobody's listening to you because you have a great way to solve some other issues.
Yeah.
But then you have to sign all these documentations that you're never allowed to create anything that aligns with it, but you have the solution. So therefore they handcuffed you because you can't live through your creativity. You can't create something because they just blocked you. Right. And I think it's unfair, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I do have a question about the entertainment side, because I started realizing there's a lot of people that I follow a lot on X and also onto other social media platforms. But a lot of artists that are on Netflix shows or are on Hulu shows where they've tasted success, but I can tell where they've spun off and they start their own little streaming stuff where they're now looking for other artists and whatnot.
Absolutely.
Do you see that keeping and evolving?
All the time. And absolutely, for sure. Because what people may not know if they're not really keen on the business side of entertainment, especially in the TV and film side, is that they're not making money. They're not making money. The artists are making money, and the artists have been making money for a while, but now the executives are not making money. And that's really where the urgency is coming from. Yeah. When everyone else was suffering, it wasn't a problem.
It was not a big deal.
No, right?
But now it's a problem. But a lot of these artists are wait a minute, I'm actually the one with all the resources. I'm actually the one that, I'm talking to the PA that has like a bunch of like these equipments at home. I am talking to, the camera person that's like, if I need help with lighting, I can do this. I am friends with, this person and that person that would come to my podcast or do anything that I want to do. And so I definitely think that we're going to start seeing a lot more and a bigger influx of artists and creators that have built, let's say, their initial platform off of these bigger like Netflixes or Hulus or labels, etc., but really honing in on like community building. And I know that's such like a common term now within like Web3, and everyone now is focused on community, but like genuinely like focusing on their core group of like super fans and supporters versus like trying to hit the masses.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Does that evolve into something in the nature? And again, my terminology may be off, like indie or independent type filmmaking or whatnot. Does it bleed into that where someone can give other artists, allow them to be creative and create their content based on what they want to create to their, almost like you said, an ecosystem, a community?
Yeah.
But a lot of times, and again, this is me not knowing what a lot of the industry is, I'm sure there's artists out there that don't want to perform certain songs, don't want to do certain things, don't want to wear certain things and whatnot, but are forced, right? Because that's what
they've agreed to some terms. Yeah.
Right. And so do you think that it ever will get to a point where it's like, F the system, we're gonna do it this way? Or do you see that already happening already?
I definitely see that already happening. I think that that's going to continue to grow as the resources, the alternative resources, where they're like, if I'm not going to use the system, what else can I use? The more available those resources become, like, I think we're going to start seeing a larger influx for sure. I think it's a resourceful thing. I think, like, even with myself, like, I had pitched to a few streaming services, like my show, the Zodiac Games, and they were denied. Like, I had a whole strategy. Like, I don't know. Well, I won't expose too much, but I, like, had found, like, the email of, like, the head of content at, like, HBO Max, and, like, I'd emailed them. Like, I sent them my pilot, like, everything. And like they denied it. Like same thing with another streaming platform that denied my show, and then like a few months later created something very similar that only had one season and wasn't even like good. But nevertheless, I mean, it's kind of just like I realized like, okay, that's not gonna work. That system is not gonna work. But then when I wanted to revamp my show, I had to think about, well, we're on strike at that time. I'm not going to sell this project to a company that is not going to even value like the effort and the intention that I put in it. They just know that it's like a cash cow project, so they're just going to want to throw money at it. But I know the money, even the first offer that they give me, is actually going to be worth like 10 times more.
Yeah.
And they're going to try to fight me on it because I'm young and I'm Black. So it's just like they're going to think that I'm not intelligent enough to negotiate, which is already expected. So why can't I just build my own? And I think we're going to just start seeing people build their own. It's like, what's the worst that can happen if I build my own? Like, I've already hit rock bottom, like with this current system already.
Yeah.
And I'm super curious. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Super curious from like, if you look at the industry as a whole right now, I mean, without going into too much of, pop culture, but there's a lot in the news right now.
Yes.
And it seems like the institution is starting to crumble a little bit. So, I mean, I'm just curious about your perspective with this. Is this going to be like a true exodus of maybe this institution crumbling and people now moving towards this vision that you have of, sustainable, creativity and people doing it themselves?
Yeah. The institution is already crumbling. I think it's already been crumbling even before like AI, and like it's been crumbling for a while. Yeah. And I think I use the example, I was actually explaining this to one of my coworkers at the music tech company that I'm at, because she didn't really know much about the music industry. She was much more on the tech side of things. And so I tried to explain to her like this. I said, if you think about like, let's say a family estate that's built in, let's say 1923, this big ass mansion, beautiful windows, beautiful lawn. Oh my gosh, the best food, the best parties. Like it just has this big legacy of being so major. And over a period of time, you're consistently, let's say, adding renovations and things like that to this home to make sure that, the families that live within this home, like it's up to that standard of the time. But when you look at the actual infrastructure of this home, it's still navigating, it's still standing on the build from the 1923 build. So it's like, the walls are creaky, it's moldy, you have things in the walls, but that's not being renovated. Your doors are being renovated, though. You're adding new furniture, but you're not actually getting to the root of the home and the estate. Yeah. So if you are realizing like, oh, I want to, you know, renovate the house again in this new era, like I think it's time for a new renovation. And, you know, the construction workers are like, we have to tear this down. Like, we cannot like renovate this home anymore because it's actually not going to sustain. It's going to crumble if you continue to try to half-ass renovate it. Like, you have to tear it down and build it from scratch. And I think that's kind of where the entertainment industry has been for a while now. I think a lot of people have been wanting to renovate it half-ass to kind of keep up with the times instead of dealing with the actual needed like destruction in order for it to like positively be rebuilt. And I think either those that are like still holding on to that are like gonna try to like hold on to that renovation, or there's gonna be people that leave that property and like literally build a whole new property or find one that's already like healthily built.
That is by far the best metaphor for what's going on I think I've ever heard. I mean, it's true though. That
true.
paints the story so perfectly.
It is true. And I think that you're going to see, you say crumbling, but I do believe that there's going to be almost like an exodus. People are, wherever there is some type of disruption, there's opportunities for
Absolutely.
And I think looking at it from that lens, same thing with the AI stuff that we talked about during lunch. People are so scared of this AI. And I mean, and it's almost like a fear tactic of scaring people away from it because Terminator is coming and
that's exactly what it
is. The world is, and there's not. And if you have a marketing degree, you're obsolete. And
it's
all
crazy.
this starts to happen. When realistically, AI is a tool.
Exactly.
And it needs to be viewed what it is. Listen, 30 years from now, there's going to be a robot now coming in and blowing up my house. Whatever. Right?
Wow.
It is what it is. Right?
She's like, oh, I don't know about
took
that.
a dark side, a dark turn.
Well, I get to is because what happens is that people continuously push back on new disruption.
Yeah.
Right? And we're supposed to continuously have disruption. If we didn't, we wouldn't have planes.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have cars. People are still fighting against electric cars saying it's not safe. We have more. I mean, it's just unreal. But point of that is that there is a lot of opportunity where there's change happening.
Absolutely.
And I think in entertainment, everything that we're seeing in the news and everything that's been happening for a couple of years now and technology and all these disruptions, there's a lot of opportunity for people.
Absolutely.
And people need to jump on that.
ASAP.
Immediately.
Yeah, and spot on. And that leads me to my next question is there is a lot of opportunity. So you as the brilliant businesswoman, what's next for you then? I mean, if there's this big opportunity, exodus of people, sustainably creative, or how did you say it?
It's a creative sustainability.
There you go. I mixed it up.
No, same thing.
But what's next? What's the opportunity for you?
These are great questions that I constantly ask myself every day. Especially more recently. I mean, I shared with you guys, you know, the recent news at lunch, but I would say that, you know, I'm kind of right now realizing that there's infrastructure that's actually needed to be built. And I think as someone who is a workaholic and a Virgo and a perfectionist, like I realized that I actually can't do this like by myself. Right. And like I realized that I actually have to provide the insights that I do have and just encourage people to start building. And I think creating ways in which people feel safe to build is really important right now. And I think that's really what I'm focused on is like, how can I support people to understand like, this is where we're going. There is opportunity in this chaos. And this is the time to get into it now. And I've said this before, like this might be a stretch, but I low-key don't think it because I've done my research. And
I just said Terminator was coming, so I'm pretty sure whatever you're going to say is not a stretch.
Well, you know, people like to spin words. Yeah, right. So I'm like, let me preface, like it might be a stretch, but I hope, you know, whoever's listening, like understands what I'm about to say of like, I believe, I'm not just saying this because I coined the term, but I do believe that the Entertech era that we're kind of entering in is kind of like the reincarnation of like the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah. I believe so.
Wow.
And I believe that because when you even look at the historical context of the Harlem Renaissance, it was right after the 1918 Spanish flu. There was a mass influx of people moving to New York of creative expression. And there was just a lot of things happening, new technology, although it wasn't like technology like how we look at it today. The, you know, like the landscapes, the studios, like the cameras, like that was all new technology at that point. And so I think when you look at the means of that and you look now, we just talked about how a lot of people are coming to Atlanta. A lot of people are moving to the South or going to Houston or going to Charlotte or they're leaving. I mean, we just had an earthquake in New York. We don't know what that's about, but like just little of those things. And we're starting to notice, like, even with me, like, I do not know how to code. How am I going to build this video game with Adobe? I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out, you know, like just by using the tools that I have. And that wasn't even something that I thought I would be doing. And so I think when people start leveraging these tools and creating new narratives for themselves because they have access to technology that they didn't have before. And I think now you don't need to know how to code because there's so many platforms that are like making those like platforms accessible for people who don't know how to code. Like that's going to change a lot of creative expression. And I think that's what we're really about to see, like a whole new space of like creativity and what that really takes to people. And I know that a lot of people have, you know, made their commentary about how AI is going to make the market really saturated, which is true. Like, I'm not going to deny that. Like, I have my own thoughts and like opinions about that. But what I will say is I actually believe that the more saturated that like the market gets with AI generated content, I actually do believe that human generated and human created content will actually have a higher value than what it does today.
Yeah, I mean, we were joking about this too, but you can easily tell if there's a, you know, a blog post written by AI or but like, and then you now start craving the ones that are actually authentically written by a human.
But one, I didn't realize people were saying that. I didn't know that people were saying that AI was going to saturate with.
Oh yeah, they're terrified.
So, I read a lot of history books. Like I think we talked about it. I still go buy books. And,
yes, me too.
And when that was the same stuff that was said about when people wrote books, when the computer came out, and you no longer had to use a typewriter.
Yeah.
And you know you can easily make an adjustment to a document. They're like, oh, everything's going to be oversaturated. Well, yeah, good. Because the more saturation you put into something, the more people can filter through it. And then it creates credibility. Like, so you brought up, you can tell the difference in styles.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I may want to read an authentic book. I'm not going to read this AI one.
Exactly.
It's my choice of what I'm going to read. And people always forget that. It's like, you still have a choice of what you want to read.
Yeah.
Or read. But you said like the generation doesn't read.
Yeah.
My youngest sister, I don't know if she ever read a book, you know, after college, or has read a book, right? Because she reads different,
right?
Her way of learning is different than my way of learning,
exactly.
And that's always forgotten too.
Yeah,
and it's kind of annoying sometimes, right? When you hear people say that, and it's like, well, you also have a choice not to do that.
Yeah,
but your choice shouldn't allow others not to enjoy that tool.
Yeah, and I think it's really powerful if you mentioned about like choice, because I think a lot of consumers have, and especially in the entertainment space, have been so accustomed to just passive consumption and like not having a choice. Like even when you think about cable, like you didn't really have a choice of what shows came on or not, or what you were watching. Like you had a choice of what channel you were going to watch, and then streaming changed that, right? And then so like the streaming era is about to transition. I'll say that because I don't want them coming for me. It's about to transition in a way that we haven't expected yet, and like that gives people another choice in terms of, do I even want to, you know, watch a show that I know you guys are going to cancel because I like it, or do I want to watch something else? Like,
no, I can't tell you how many shows I've watched and I was
Let's
like, this
clock
is
it.
a good show,
and they cancel it,
and they cancel the show.
Of course.
And I'm like, really? You're not even going to tell me what happened? At least finish it.
But you know what's so interesting? And shout out to Marie Hunter, because Marie actually has this quote that she said to me, even from like an entrepreneurship standpoint, but I actually apply this to a lot of like the networks right now canceling a lot of these shows, which is, as a business, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you need to really listen to what your consumers are asking and what they're saying.
Absolutely.
And really listening to consumer feedback, because it's really like an open book test. And if you have an open book test and you have the book at the page where the answer is at and you failed the test, it is on you and it is your responsibility for failing that test. When you have people complaining about shows getting canceled, this was their favorite show, etc., on X, on Twitter, on TikTok, on all these things now where people have the ability to share their opinion outside of focus groups, like that are paid, like you are actually hearing their opinion, and you still cancel the shows and wonder why you're not recouping any of the funds, it's because you're not listening to the people that are actually paying you. So it's kind of like, you're failing the open book test, which is like, so who really doesn't read? Like,
absolutely. Mic drop. Ego can blind you. That's for sure.
That's definitely it, for sure. And I just want to encourage like a lot of the other executives, whether they're emerging or already existing, but really to the emerging ones, because I feel like the older ones, not all of the older execs don't listen. Some of them do because they actually care and they understand like their value. But I think a lot of the older executives only listen when they feel like they have to in order to survive.
Yeah.
So
that point's almost too late.
Exactly. So what I'm about to say is, especially for like the emerging, in terms of like actually listen to what people are telling you. Like, just listen. Like, I think there's a lot of power in listening. And I think sometimes observation does a lot more than conversation.
Wow.
I like that.
I don't know a better way to end that conversation. I'm literally like,
That's
you.
good.
I'm a little bit just speechless. The way that your wisdom is just it's bounce. I can't even explain it.
Oh my God, thanks guys.
Thank you so much for your story. We have a few hot seat questions.
That's fine. I'm down for the hot seat.
Are you ready for the hot seat questions?
Yeah, go ahead. You can ask away.
Okay. So we like to throw a couple questions out just for people to get to know you. Quick answers.
I love it.
Awesome. Okay. What are you currently listening to?
Oh my gosh, I'm listening to a lot right now. Okay, there's like 3 artists I'm listening to right now. The first one is Ruben Vincent. He's like up and coming and freaking phenomenal. He's like next generation of talent. Incredible. He just dropped a project called General Admission. I suggest everyone listen to it. The second person I'm listening to, of course, is Beyonce. Of course, Cowboy Carter. We had a whole dissertation about that in the car. And the third, honestly, I really have enjoyed Flo Milli's project. I think she is a rap girl that has deserved a lot of the attention that she's getting now, but she's been putting in the work for years. And so I really like this trilogy project actually that she just dropped. And I think she's just like fun, cute, like it's a vibe.
I love it. Love it. Favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Ooh.
I know.
Atlanta has so many good
I know.
spots.
It is tough. It's a tough one.
Oh my gosh. I would say, because I've been here so many times and I'm never disappointed, Serena Pacifistico in Colony Square. They have a phenomenal lavender lemonade cocktail, and their pasta is always made fresh, and their bed is always fresh, and everything's just phenomenal over there.
We have to try that one. I haven't tried that yet.
It's so good.
Delicious. Atlanta or LA?
Atlanta, hands down.
Hands down. I love
Next
it.
question.
Yeah,
She's like done with that one.
Yeah, LA is just, I said to you guys before, you know, like Atlanta, I feel like is a place for creative builders.
Yeah.
And like people that really want to build. I think LA is a place where you go where you already have a foundation for yourself and you're trying to bring it to the masses.
Yeah.
But I also think that's going to change too in a little bit.
Yeah. Shout out Atlanta. Love it. Home base.
Yes.
Okay. Your favorite pastime?
Ooh, this might be kind of like, I hope it's not weird. I listen to ASMR a lot.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That's not weird at all.
It's really, because you know how sometimes like people will make the videos of like people like eating the pickles or whatever. I don't listen to that, but like I listen to like when they're like whispering in your ear, but it's like the high tech mic, and it's like it feels like they're in your ear.
Yeah.
It like helps me go to sleep.
Interesting.
Do you listen to it with headphones on?
Of course.
Soothes your brain.
Well, you know what? I have a
It
question
does.
now.
Yeah.
Just because you said that, I just came up with one. Headphones or is music playing through speakers as audio out?
Ooh, headphones, because I can block out the world.
So my son is the opposite.
Really?
I've gotten
He's
him
Gen Alpha,
headphones
I think.
and whatnot, and he blasts his music. The whole floor shakes when he listens to music.
Hilarious.
But then everyone else in my house listens to headphones.
Right?
Yeah. And so I like music outside of my headphones.
Nice.
So when I'm working in front of my computer and I'm in the zone, I don't actually like to wear headphones. If I'm in the office, I'm obviously not going to blast music. But working from home, absolutely.
I will say this, just being like an entertainment girl, I actually, if it's like a new project that I'm like listening to, I actually would prefer to listen to it in the car.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
Like the system in the car actually helps me like retain like the beat like better. It's like a weird thing.
That's so cool though.
But then but like other than that, like headphones, I can block out the world.
All right, beats or lyrics? Which do you like the most?
I just have such a strong love for linguistics, so lyrics always.
Yep. Same.
Yeah.
All right. Podcast or music?
Music.
TV or movies?
Oh, that's a good question. TV, because of the story.
I like it. And then what is that one distraction that you do every week? What's your weekly distraction?
I don't know if I can say that on camera.
Well, let me refrain. So, weekly distraction. What do you got going on this week that is going to give you a breakaway from?
Oh, okay.
We'll make it less, more
I was
PG.
like, I don't know. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I can say that on camera. No, I'm actually planning like a retreat. I think I was telling you guys like I'm going to Charlotte in a few weeks, and it's actually just like a needed trip. Like I think a lot of change obviously has happened in like my entrepreneurship path as of recently, and I feel like I'm the type of person where I have no problem giving myself that space of solitude. And I think that's really needed, especially when you're constantly like outpouring and creating and putting things in the world. Like I'm, again, learning how to be soft with myself and like giving myself and really allowing myself to invest in myself without wanting to monetize it. Like I'm not making this trip. Like it's easy for me to invest in myself if I'm like, oh, I can make that money back. But not everything is about making money back.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I think that's been kind of like my free time, like planning this trip, like, you know, what am I going to do? Like, why am I going to this space specifically? Where am I going to go? Like, I definitely want to be around like nature. Like, I don't really want to be like around like too much city stuff.
Right.
So like really figuring out like, do I want to go like canoeing? Like, do I want to go on some horses? Like, I don't know. Like, I just kind of, like just learning how to like give myself again the grace and like enjoying planning something that is an investment for me, but the return doesn't necessarily need to be money. It could really just be like fulfillment and like clarity.
Totally. I mean, I feel like we could talk with her for like 17 more hours.
You're not getting off the hook. What is your weekly distraction?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. PG.
Please. We need to get a memo from Apple.
My weekly distraction. Oh my gosh. This week, I'm actually reading an interesting book right now. And so like there's these books, this is kind of cheesy, but I usually read 3 books at a time, a business book, like a nonfiction or a fiction. Like I'll like to read like 3 all the time.
I'm going to have to ask you like how you do that, because I actually want to do that too. And I feel like I haven't figured out a framework for that yet.
It's like I just have to go with the energy, go with the vibe. So right now I'm actually reading this like murder mystery book on Amazon, and it's kind of sucking up some of my time. It's like putting me to sleep finally, so I can actually get, I'm not blaring TV in my ears before bed now. I'm reading, and so that's distracting me a little bit. It's not 90 Day Fiancé right now, so I know that's what you're thinking. And yours?
So this is the podcast itself is a passion project.
I love that.
It's something that I've always wanted to done, and going back and forth with Tracy, it was like the perfect. I think we talked about this. The synergy was there. It was the perfect to collaborate on this together. So everything I do with the podcast is a distraction for me, because it distracts me away from the day-to-day stuff, right?
The grind.
And I can put on music and edit. I can put on music and plan. And so we're planning on taking this show on the road.
Love it!
And we're taking over the streets of Nashville.
Oh, that's sick.
And we have some really cool interviews lined up.
That's so exciting.
Of course, because I always have to do things too far ahead.
I love it though.
I decided to book different venues for different recording sessions to do. And one of them is pretty much in a historic basement, and the way it's set up is like it looks like an interrogation room.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be so fire.
Separate theme. So this weekend is planning it all out logistically, and I know it sounds very sad, but that is like what is distracting me.
No, it's awesome.
But it's a big passion for me, and I just hired out. We'll give him a shout out once everything gets squared away, but a videographer out in Nashville who's gonna do all the video editing for us and whatnot. And
nice.
I'm excited.
That is okay. Your distraction's a little better than mine. I feel like I need to step up my game.
I mean, I don't know what book she was reading. I mean, this is a new trend I saw on Instagram. So, and I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you guys.
Tracy was talking all about you from the retreat, which by the way, I'm jealous I didn't go. And so, obviously, I was like, well, the next one I have to be included. This is not going to be only fun for you guys.
Yeah.
But no, I honestly, you are very, very talented.
Thank you.
Very intelligent, and your drive is very contagious.
Thanks, guys.
There's no doubt we would love to have you on again.
Oh my gosh, of course.
For sure.
I'll say this. I would say to any entrepreneur that's like starting or it's like going through a pivot right now or anything like that, and not to be like spiritual auntie, but like it's like genuine, so true. Like, please walk by faith and not by sight. And I think that's really important, because I know like the saying traditionally is like, oh, I need to see it to believe it. But I'm like the opposite. Like, I think you need to believe it first before you see it. And I think that is like so important, because especially in entertainment, but I think this just applies into like entrepreneurship. Like, you can have a vision for something, and the day that you plant the seed is really not the day that you bear the fruit. So it's kind of like, you kind of really have to have faith for this to even work. Like, there's going to be days you're not going to get those like responses. You're not going to get that callback. You're not going to get like any type of like confirmation. Like, you have to be able to validate yourself, and you have to be confident enough in yourself to be like, it doesn't matter if people don't get it now, eventually we'll get to that point. And that is what you have to remember, like, throughout everything.
Damn. I mean, I ran out of microphones of dropping, but where can people find you? Give us give us that, where we could get that knowledge from.
Oh my gosh, thanks guys. I'm trying to get back into my consistent posting. You know, real world stuff gets, you know, life. But you guys can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I'm more active on Instagram, but at Gen Z Exec, but at Gen Z Exec. That's GEN, the letter ZEXEC, and that's where you can find me.
We'll put it in the meeting notes. Yeah, give us the links for the books.
Yes.
And keep writing, because you are a book of knowledge.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And thank you guys for what you're doing for entrepreneurs too. Like, I really want to give you my flowers, because I feel like in my entrepreneurship journey, like, I kind of take inspiration obviously from like interviews and like books and like things like that. But what you guys are doing, and also like allowing entrepreneurs that usually don't get seen the opportunity to share their story, is also a major thing too. So I want to give you guys your flowers. Please keep doing it, please.
I appreciate the love.
Thank you.
Thank you again, guys, for tuning into this week's episode of the Layover Podcast. We truly hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as go ahead and check out mindandsocial.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter to get behind the scenes content, be the first to know when an episode drops, and, you know, find out about those fun events we're going to be throwing throughout the year. Also, check out the show notes for the information of our guests, where you can find them, their Instagrams, their social media, all of the things so that you can go and share and spread some love. All right, guys, thank you again for joining, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody rob me of my victory. Number one, that's what I'm meant to be. When by any means, only thing that makes sense to me, I can make nice or make history. I got that dog in me, yeah. Turn me up.